Welcome back to the Best of Health podcast. My goal is simple. Each episode, I hope to provide you with insightful conversations with a varied scope of healthcare professionals, clinicians, researchers, functional medicine practitioners, and industry leaders to open up the dialogue to inspire you, the listener, to consider that declining health as we age is not a given, and that with the right information, many chronic diseases are indeed preventable. I hope to engage and inspire everyone to achieve the very best of health. And today I'm talking to Deirdre Nazareth, a functional medicine practitioner and a fully trained osteopath. We have a fascinating conversation around how gut health and the microbiome impacts chronic pain and how people can manipulate the gut microbiome to lower that inflammatory response. We also talk about conditions such as endometriosis and pelvic pain and how multifactorial that is, and how taking a functional medicine approach and understanding the role of osteopathy in eliminating or reducing that inflammatory response can be so helpful for many, many women. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. I am absolutely thrilled and so excited to speak to a really dear friend and colleague who is we fondly called Deirdre Nazareth back to the podcast. She is a woman with many, many strings to her bow. So let me go through those. Deirdre started her career with a degree in biophysiology from the Drew University in New Jersey. She then went on to work as a research assistant in the Department of Human Genetics at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, where she simultaneously worked as a top personal trainer in one of New York's finest fitness facilities. This combined led her to pursue a master's degree in osteopathy, and then, would you believe it, another master's in pain neuroscience at King's College London. She comes from a family interested and that specialize in health. Her father is a pediatric neurologist, and he was the one that apparently encouraged her to enter into the world of functional medicine. And this is where Deirdre and I met. And she is also a qualified IFM certified practitioner, and she qualified in 2016. Yep. And Deirdre also has recently co-authored a chapter in a fantastic publication, the Integrative Gastroenterology publication, which came out in 2019, and we will dive into some of that in just one moment. And so it is with absolute pleasure that I introduce Deirdre here on the podcast. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you so much, Tanya. It's been such a nice treat to be asked to join you on your podcast. I was so excited. I was like, yay. Yeah, I think, one of the things that has been really difficult to kind of understand, and you made reference to the book chapter. It was such a great honor to be asked to write that because, and shed some light on it, really through a modern understanding of pain, because what we see clinically doesn't always make sense. You have people who come in with visceral pain or pain in the gut, or women tend to have a mix of both, pelvic pain as well as gut pain, tummy pain. Men can relate to this as well. It's not just women, but obviously it's more common in women.
Yeah.
But how can we explain what's happening locally to then you have these extra manifestational symptoms of headache, joint pains, muscle pains, and migraines. So collectively together, they would comprise irritable bowel syndrome, or as we know, IBS.
Absolutely. So that's you preempted. That's one of my a sort of a question that I wanted to ask, actually. And to explain to our listeners, as an osteopath, because you do have so many strings to your bow, as an osteopath, and explaining to how you integrate a functional medicine approach within that modality, in terms of how you explain where the pain comes from, specifically around conditions that have been given the label of IBS, but also, as you highlighted, we do see that a lot around women's health with the likes of endometriosis and pelvic pain. How do you explain where that pain actually originates and what the mechanisms are to some of your clients?
So now I'm not going to go too much into the classical osteopathic explanation of things, but what I'll talk about is more the pain, the modern pain neurophysiology, and that's how I explain it. So with respect to osteopathy in general, now as an osteopath, we use palpation to detect changes in tissue. So that's a huge difference between someone who's not a manual therapist or someone who's not educated in this way, because you're actually you're studying the body and you have an awareness and an understanding, gleaned over 5 years of touching people, to learn and know the associations and connections anatomically that are underneath your fingers. And as you touch different things, conditions, you have a sense of what that tissue, like a healthy tissue, should feel like, what an unhealthy tissue should feel like. And then you have an understanding of what that organization is under your hands and how they work together. So that's osteopathy. And how we explain that, in terms of a principle and a philosophy behind osteopathy, is that osteopaths believe primarily that the body is a unit of mind and spirit. So we always look at things in a very holistic way. So we were taught that way, and we're, typically an osteopathic session would be much longer than your allopathic or GP session. So separately from that, though, the understanding of what those changes in tissue texture and symmetry, we look at symmetry. So typically you would go and you would see someone, they would probably tell you to undress, and they would look at your spinal alignment, and they would look at your tissue texture and look at if there's any redness or change in any of that. And that's how we would diagnose with our hands and visually diagnose. And then we would look at and touch the tissue. So my understanding has changed because I've done the master's in pain after that, which explains what's going on. So with visceral pain in particular, it's actually not that easy to understand in the pain world as well, because, we have many models for somatic pain or body pain, but not that many models for visceral pain. So we use a lot of the explanations for visceral pain were taken from somatic pain explanations. So, but there are clinical features that are kind of unique to visceral pain. So I'll go through those. So like I said, you have pain in the viscera. So that's called direct visceral pain. So direct visceral pain is typically felt in the midline of the body. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you an example of that in a second. But then you also have indirect visceral pain, where you have like pain elsewhere. So, viscera can refer. And this is what I said earlier about how IBS can have symptoms in the tummy and in the organs or in the pelvic region. And then you suddenly get pain in your back or your head or your shoulder or something like that, depending on which organ it has been sensitized. And that's another topic I'll go in a second. So you get poor localized diffuse pain. And the reason why, when you get IBS and you have a tummy pain, it's not sharp. It's not always sharp. Sure. If it's sharp, then it's something serious. But usually it's kind of this broad general malaise, and it's like hard to really place. You just generally don't feel well, and correspondingly you just don't. You immediately kind of go, oh, I feel really bad. So with visceral pain, you get this strong, this poor localized diffuse pain. You may actually have some tissue pain, so referred pain, like either to the back or head or wherever else.
Yeah.
And then you also get strong, it affects your autonomic nervous system. So we all know that, you know, you suddenly are sitting on the tube and you're like, oh my God, I have the sweats. And it's like, you know what that sensation is going to be. You're like, I need to run to the loo. So I need to get to a loo in like 5 minutes or else I'm going to have an accident. And it's like sweating,
sure. Exactly.
You know, you're white faced and you can go hot and cold at the same time. And you're like, what is going on? I ate something and it suddenly does not agree with me.
Yeah.
And you may even feel nauseous. So this is because of the impact on the autonomic nervous system at the same time. So, but the other thing that visceral pain often has are strong affective. So affective has to do with emotions. You have strong affective responses. So fear, emotional distress, catastrophization, it go kind of hand in hand with visceral issues. It's not to say that doesn't happen with, you know, body pain as well, but it's more linked with visceral issues. So, so Deirdre, back to what I was saying about,
Is this, when you say afferent, is this to explain to our listeners, this is to do with the nerves that are communicating back up to the brain? Is that so that
yes.
Yeah.
So affect is an emotional response, but afferent, so when I say anything going afferent is going into the brain and spinal cord, and anything coming down is efferent, or an effect. Affect versus effect. Yeah. I know I always get that wrong myself. I always just check, but like affect typically does with emotional response, but in this case, when you're talking about something impacting your body from the periphery, or something impacting your brain and spinal cord from the periphery, it's afferent. If my impulse is then to move my arm away, that's efferent. So I will say from the brain down instead, and just to make that more clear. So basically, so what I was saying before about direct visceral pain, so I'll give you some examples. So example, like if you get gallbladder pain, you can get like diffuse pain in the epigastric area, which is around the solar plexus or the celiac plexus. And this is due to those pain receptors running along the same sympathetic innervation as the plexus. So when we look at what that innervation is, we look at how those nerves are supplied. You look T5 through T12. And why that's important, because then you'll get pain along the diaphragm, or basically the solar plexus is located between your diaphragm. And what it does, it helps you feel sensation in your liver and your pancreas. So you get pain right there in like around the kind of middle of your tummy, or like right in the middle of the top of your diaphragm. And then you can also get pain in the upper back. So those segments I said, T5 to T9, then you suddenly feel like you have pain up here. And why is that? That comes from the referred pain or convergence. So convergence is the one thing that actually goes along with visceral pain more often than just somatic pain, because you have convergence where you have different types of sensory information going into the same neuron in the spinal cord. So from the periphery, like you have one neuron coming from the skin and one neuron coming from the bowel, and it'll go into the same exact entry point on the same exact neuron in the spinal cord. And then the spinal cord sends up to the brain. So you're getting this mixed information, but from two different sources going up to the brain, and it's like if you were to put the light switch on and off too much. Perfect. The brain goes, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to send a response. And it starts to panic, essentially. And so now the brain is like, I don't know, should I be turning the light on? Should I be turning the light off? It gets confused. And that's what sensitization is, basically. So you have this constant information. If you just keep switching that light on and off and on and off and on and off and on and off, and the brain goes, what? I don't know what to do. I'm just it goes haywire. And so now it's going to just allow, in some cases, it allows all the information to be transmitted as pain. That's not good, because then you have pain signals that actually are increased because it doesn't know how to dampen them. So you have imbalance in modulation. So that's what that on-off switch is, a modulatory. If someone's saying, yeah, send it through, or no, don't send it through. And that's happening at several aspects along the way up to the brain, because ultimately the brain decides whether we have pain or not, always, 100% of the time. But when the signal is not read correctly, it's like someone reading Chinese and you only speak English and you're like, I think this said that, so I'm just going to say yes. Pain, and then now you also get non-painful things that are painful. So you have a whole mix of stuff going on, and the brain doesn't know how to discern the difference between the two. So ultimately, you're getting this central sensitization, which is the brain and the spinal cord can't dampen the signal. And then so because the brain thinks that you are under threat, now the input can be from skin, it can be from your bowel, but it also can be coming from the top down, not just from the bottom up. So now we also have a situation where the brain has gone a bit, hokey, I was going to say, I said hokey. The brain has gone a bit crazy. So now it's all the things, I said visceral pain is associated with emotional distress. So if you have a lot of fear and stress and catastrophization, we always think the worst when something happens. You're like, oh my God, I'm going to die, a horrible feeling to have that. But often that is the next thought. So all of those thoughts are biochemical events that are actually changing and assisting maintaining that wrong message. So you're in a situation where things get amplified, and they get amplified even when there's no signal anymore. So now the person's not switching the switch on and off, and they're still perpetuating. It's like having a phantom, just like you think that the pain is there and it should be there. But what happens is the brain actually changes its receptive field. So think about if your body was under threat, you would want to protect it as much as possible. If you were in a castle and people are coming, back in the days when we had wars like that,
yeah.
We lived in a castle, you would take as many different forms of protection that you could. You had the archers, and you had the the infantry, then you had the massive vats of oil. So the brain does the same thing, just it actually increases its receptive field. So everything in your body is represented on your brain, on the somatosensory cortex. So if you touch my hand, I know that message, although very quick, goes up to my brain and back down, and it tells me that you've touched my hand in a soft way, non-threatening, so I know that it's okay. So now if that same message has been transmitted in a wrong way, and my brain is interpreting it as painful, I'm going to suddenly now be threatened by that, and I'm going to wince away. And even though that's not a painful stimulus, the brain has decided to so let's say the viscera, it's decided to make whatever is closest to that organ more sensitive too. So now you'll feel it even further away from the organ, or you may feel it in a different organ. And that is actually what is called neuronal crosstalk. So you have the referred sensation, and then you also have this neurogenics. So coming from the nerve is actually producing peptides, chemicals and stuff, this like soup of stuff that's traveling down the axon around the area, that's actually changing the potential, electric potential of that neuron, and causing, and the tissues in that local area. So then what happens with neurogenic inflammation, you get swelling, you get vasodilation, and you get mast cell degranulation. So mast cells are important with IBS. We always talk about histamine. Histamine is actually a neurotransmitter that's released with all injury, not just tummy injury, or, we have histamine receptors in our entire bodies, all over, in our brain, in our lungs, everywhere. So that local milieu of like soup that's now inflammatory is causing local inflammation it can actually change the brain down to the organs effect. So efferent effect. So now you're actually getting symptoms of, so the organs in nearby would be your large intestine, small intestine. Now you're getting potentially diarrhea, constipation, or altered peristalsis. So it's not just from the potential amounts of bacteria that are there. You know, when we talk about dysbiosis and SIBO, it's actually coming from the brain. So it's actually a neurogenic or derived in the neuron or derived from the brain is telling the body to do that because it's sensitized. So you're getting information from the periphery that's making the brain go, that's painful, that's a threat. You're getting information from the brain, from the psychology, from the emotion, from all the stuff that goes with pain, the areas of the brain that are highlighted with pain, which I won't go into right now in detail, but I'll just say that like everyone's experience with pain is unique because everyone, you know, it's been called like a cerebral signature by certain groups of researchers. It's been called a pain matrix or neuromatrix because everyone has their own kind of unique pain sensitivity to things because it's based on culture, on beliefs about pain, how you were brought up with pain, how your family was around pain. Did your parents, like when you were kids, did your parents go, oh my God, every time you hurt yourself? So now your sensitivity is higher, which leads you to be more anxious. Are you a depressed person? Those things are going to actually impact your pain sensitivity. And then with visceral pain in particular, throw in women tend to be the more affected by visceral pain. The more common visceral pain is functional bowel disorders. So I'm not talking about cancer. That's not gender specific necessarily, but, you know, we're talking about IBS, you know, urinary pain, like pelvic pain. These are all associated with strong emotional distress and previous trauma. So stress and previous trauma, usually in childhood, and they've done studies with animal models of IBS where they showed that the studies using the baby rat leads to where they actually did like the study where they electrically stimulated the baby rat, but not the adult rat actually had a sensitized system. So the baby rat, when later in life, actually developed these symptoms without any peripheral stimulus, whereas the adult rat, it didn't have any impact. So we see that a lot with especially with visceral pain, you know, with respect to pelvic pain. You know, a lot of chronic pelvic pain has not only a SIBO component because of what I just told you about neuronal crosstalk, because you're getting the visceros reflex. So the organs talk to each other, the organs talk to your body. So you get the viscerosomatic. So you get the organ pain with the referred muscle or brain pain, like headaches. And oral, it can go the other way around. So you can stimulate the body tissue in the area of where the organ is, and you can get pain in the organ. So it's a lot of stuff to take in.
It's a lot to take in, but sort of just so fascinating. So you can just listen to that again and again. You can listen to
it's like again and again. Someone has nothing else to do.
So there's a lot to unpack in there, and part of what I think is really interesting and not that well known, which you sort of spoke about, was that when we think about stress and trauma, Deirdre spoke about an element of the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, and we think about that as setting off a cascade of hormonal, neuroendocrine, sort of passing the baton of hormones that sort of escalate the stress response and therefore pain. And what is interesting is that actually there are receptors for what is called corticotrophic releasing hormone, which is essentially the production of cortisol in the skin. The immune system has receptors for these. So the connections are so vast that we think about this being just about one system, one organ, but it is truly holistic, as you articulated. It is truly interconnected, and therefore this approach of approaching from the top down, but also bottom up and midway and out. There isn't really any one which way to start, is there? Is that we can, as long as if we have this information and not apply either polygreen pharmacy, as that there is a supplement for everything, or that there is conversely a pill for everything. It is about understanding those connections.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the most challenging things to understand for a lot of clients, is that like you go do this and well, I don't understand why I have this as well. And it's actually, we're looking at the whole body, the nervous system. If you were to peel away your skin, like drip away all your skin and understand what your nervous system is, you'll see an outline. And I have a post on this. You see an outline of the body. It looks like someone's drawn. It's so beautiful, but you see the nerves come out. They come out right to your fingertips. So if you're getting input everywhere on your body, think of that. All that input can be translated into this kind of mixed message as well. So it's not just about what you ate. It's not just about something, that you didn't sleep well. It's both. And you have to understand and appreciate how your nervous system has been trained your whole life. This is especially with respect to visceral stuff. We tend to not, they go, oh yeah, I've dealt with that stress. Well, have you really? Like, I'm not saying that in a judgmental way, but it's something you have to consider as well, as just as strongly as doing, maybe the diet and lifestyle that we typically do with functional medicine.
Perfect. So that then segues really beautifully into when you first start working with somebody that has been experiencing pain for, often it's decades, I would imagine, and it can be. I think that helps to illuminate the approaches of, for example, mindful techniques, which I know form a really important part, foundation of your practice, having been one of your clients. And I really see, could you explain the connection of some of the breath work that you and I did around some of my back and shoulder pain? Could you maybe explain sort of the connections to our listeners in terms of how that, if you like, reteaches the nervous system, or re-educates?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially what trauma and trauma doesn't have to be something so significant as abuse or, God forbid, anything like that. It can be it's how you experience something at a time that happened, and then you just never let go. Your brain thought that the whole time. Like, for example, my brother once called me stupid. And I think that stuck with me for the rest of my life. Not that he ever even remembers, but like, we always say, oh, dummy, you're so dumb. And, that kind of thing that, repetition, and then someone else says, and you go, oh my gosh, it must be true. Yeah. I am dumb. And then that, whether silly or not, whether it's, something more significant than that actually changes the brain. So you're in a state of sympathetic arousal. So what sympathetic nervous system is your typical fight, flight, or freeze. So we've all had experiences of all three. Fight, if you're going to fight someone, you're going to have certain adjectives that you would use. And this is what I always say. It's like, give me some adjectives that you would use to say if you're going to fight me right now. How would your posture be as well? You'd be kind of guarding yourself like, Muhammad Ali, or, they walk into the ring, they're all head down, and they have their hood capes on and stuff. My dad was a huge boxing fan, so I grew up watching boxing. So he actually was also doing ringside for them too, at one stage. But like, yeah, he would come in, the boxer comes in and is protecting himself. You don't walk in with their hands out open, like hit me anywhere. You're going to protect yourself. So the brain adaptively thinks that when it's in a stressed situation that you have to protect yourself. And the same thing with fleeing. You know, if you're fleeing, you're going to be running down the street in a stressed way. Your body is going to react in the same way. You're going to be, everything is for survival. It's not like I'm just going to go for a jog. You know, you're fleeing for your life. You're fighting for your life. And that's the thing that we often forget. So what happens when you have multiple inputs of stress? That's putting and then from previous stress as well, that's putting your brain into this fight or flight mode that's stuck. And so with mindfulness techniques, and what you're doing is think about what happens when you're breathing in those two ways. If you're going to breathe, if you're sprinting, you're not breathing slow, deep breaths into your belly. You're breathing short, shallow, right? Because you want your brain to get as much oxygen as quickly as possible. And if I guided you to breathe in that way, and I said, pick up the pace, like breathe faster, shorter, I would trigger you to have a panic attack. And that's actually what a panic attack is the brain sees no other way out, and you start breathing short and shallow. You're like, and then suddenly you could pass out, your lips turn blue, but basically your oxygen is not getting to where it should be in all of the tissues. So mindfulness and mindfulness techniques, basically they form it. It's there to truly connect with what is happening to you at all times. I don't expect this to happen all the time, but when you do things in a connection and you actually slow down and you start to breathe diaphragmatically, that actually puts you into what we want is the rest and recovery. What we don't want is eating in front of a screen, because, you know, the whole process of digestion, we're talking about visceral pain, you know, when does digestion start? It doesn't start in the mouth. It actually starts in your brain. You have a cephalic phase of digestion. So you need to think about food. But then if you only think about food and then you don't connect with your food, you need to see your food and you need to touch your food. So if you don't see your food, you're not actually connecting with it at all. And then obviously that's just a digestive disaster after, because certain enzymes are not produced, certain hormones are not produced, like your satiety hormone. You don't get to break down that food and get the nourishment from it because your brain hasn't even registered that you've eaten. You're probably still hungry and you've actually not digested anything. So now you've created a system where you've potentially now leading to IBS, SIBO, other things. So why is that mindfulness is so important? It's because you connect to that entire experience of nourishment. And often too, with visceral pain, or people who have visceral pain, they actually lack this, what's called interoceptive capacity. It's a lack of understanding your homeostasis balance. You know, you get these signals, you're thirsty, you drink water, you're hungry, you eat. You're full, your satiety, or if you have an itch, these are interoceptive. We have an entire nervous system of interoception that tells us when we need to change things. So we're always balanced. And people with visceral pain, or people who have chronic visceral pain, often don't have that, or they lack that awareness. So you have to teach them how to have that. And one of those things is being mindful, whether that is eating or doing yoga or doing things where they can actually connect with what's going on in their mind and understand how it's playing out in their body, and what even the thoughts too, because, you know, your breath changes with when you are in sympathetic arousal or when you're not. So if you suddenly see someone, they come in and you've suddenly changed, your entire physique has changed, your posture has changed, you suddenly get clammy hands, this is a sympathetic response. So being more aware of how those things impact your body is what mindfulness is.
Beautifully put. And I think that the highlight, if you had a little mental highlighter, listeners, the key word there is connectiveness. And it's not surprising we were it's still a very new model and way of thinking, that the body is not, in the systems of the body and the cells and the tissues and the organs that make up these systems are not individual systems. Allopathic medicine sort of specializes in that, in terms of, you would see an endocrinologist or you would see a cardiologist. But everything that Dee has just so elegantly been talking about is completely indicative of how, right down to the end of our fingertips, as she just described, that it is all connected, and what you touch with your little finger is being registered in your brain, which is just phenomenal. And the system that runs through that is the gastrointestinal tract that we call the gut. So that is just one example. And I think the way that Deirdre explained that was,
okay.
I don't know why I have this mental block with it. It's not even your name, Deirdre.
No, it is my name, but it's just my more formal name.
Just fascinating. So you talked about oxygenation there of breath, and that also connects with posture, doesn't it? And you have some lovely posts on your social media accounts, and we've spoken a lot about posture and the implications of the jaw, and how to hold the tongue actually, and how that impacts in areas of headaches and migraines.
Yes. So back to what I was saying about having an ideal posture. This is not to say that I would stand there and look at you and say your posture is bad and you should be sitting with your back straight. It's more what is not going to put you in that survival mode. So posture is an indirect way to tell the brain that you are in a fight mode, a flight mode, or a freeze mode. So if you're sitting hunched over, like I said, your brain is thinking to itself, oh, she must be really stressed, or she's in a survival mode. So I'm going to start to breathe in that way. And then I'm going to change if you do short, shallow breaths, try and do that hunched over with your breathing through your nose. It's almost impossible, because like I said before, when you're sprinting and when you're going to fight someone, you want the most amount of oxygen to your brain as possible, so you will adaptively breathe through your mouth. Now, that's not necessarily bad at some points, but if you breathe through your mouth all the time, and if you notice that you're doing this even while you're listening to this podcast, stop. Because you shouldn't be hunched over. So like anyone listening, just hunch over and try to take a deep breath in through your nose, and see how difficult that is to get it into your diet, like all the way down to your belly. It's impossible. It hurts. In fact, I feel pain in my back. So your brain goes, okay, that's not working. So let's make her get more oxygen in. So what are they going to do? What's the brain going to do? It's going to stick your neck out a little bit more like a turtle. Yeah. And you see people like this walking in the street, and you see people walking, and then it's going to actually, if I'm hunched over and I'm looking, my eyes are going to follow where my head is going. My head's pointing to the ground. So I have to stick my head out because I have to see in front of me. And you just look at people walking in London, you see most people walking like that. It's not, the brain will always find a way to get oxygen to the most valuable thing that's encased in its own safe, our brain in the skull. So we need, ultimately you will see variations on this theme of how people walk, of how people hold their bodies. It's really all comes down to how can that person get oxygen and how can they move well. So those are the two things, they go one in hand. So your posture is not necessarily ideal compared to a book, but it's like, are you getting enough oxygen for your tissues and your cells to be healthy and be in that rest and recovery state? Are you signaling your brain to be in your parasympathetic state, or are you signaling your brain to be in sympathetic state? And the sympathetic, as we said, is fight, flight, freeze, or are you rest and digest? Most people are fight, flight, freeze all the time and think they're in rest and digest. Like I said, they're either eating on their phone and they're going, oh yeah, I'm going to be out, and like food's falling out of their mouth, or I've actually seen people do this, running down the street with a a burger in their hand. I'm like, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
But people do it, and they just totally disconnect to what's going on. They have no idea that they're even eating. Food's all over their coat and whatnot. It's just the way of the busy life. And until you do something mindful and actually tell someone, do you know you do that? When you do that, they go, oh, I had no idea. So yeah, it's understanding.
Hopefully this is a big part of the reason for the Best of Health podcast, is to share snippets of information so that there is an aha moment and hopefully there will be a number of people listening to this this will be their aha moment. And whether it's the turtleneck or we all have it's about the impact.
Oh, I didn't even forget about, I forgot about the jaw. So but a lot of people are waking up with jaw pain, and a lot of people I'm seeing, especially now, with jaw pain. But if you're in that same position, your everything, so with sympathetic control or sympathetic nervous system, everything tightens. Think of a dog. When a dog, if you go to someone's neighbor, we used to sneak into friends' houses, like tried to sneak in when we were younger. And sometimes
childhood here.
They had a pool, and then you'd see the dog, and the dog comes out, and it's like, "Arr!" And it makes its whole body really tight, and to make itself look bigger. And the face, it grows his teeth and it clenches his teeth because it's trying to tell you that, it's trying to scare you.
Yeah.
So adaptively, that's exactly what we do as well. So if you're signaling your brain that you are stressed, you are also going to be holding your jaw. So you're not actually going to be breathing through your nose. And this is where the whole forcing breathing through your mouth has come through. I know some people have probably seen people taping their mouth, because mouth breathing. So the tongue posture separately from that, your tongue should naturally rest at the roof of your mouth, like kind of the upper teeth, like just it should stay there. And if it doesn't, then you know that your tongue posture is not good. So your tongue is actually a muscle. And this chicken neck that you get as you get older, that's actually indicative of you having poor tongue posture too. So you can actually strengthen that by doing exercises like clicking. And actually there's this osteopath that I actually read an article from. Her name is Michelle Veneziato. Anyway, she wrote a whole article online on tongue posture. That's the one I referenced in my post.
Okay.
But people have been taping their mouth. You can actually use a tongue depressor between your lips and see if you can hold that, or a pen, for 30 minutes. Hold that between your lips without letting it fall. And if you can do that, then you progress to taping your mouth. And if you do that, you can progress to taping your mouth all day, or not fully taping, just like a little tape as a reminder, like in a vertical position, just as a reminder to keep your mouth closed. And then humming or clicking your tongue, like doing things like that, actually trains your tongue, because it's a muscle. So you need to strengthen it. And also the other thing with tongue posture is that it develops your cheekbones. So if you want like more structured cheekbones, then you can do that. And actually
everyone.
It's like no Botox needed, no fillers needed. Just strengthen your tongue. But the poor tongue posture comes from mouth breathing as an adult, but it also comes from improper breastfeeding, or like poor suction as a baby when you're breastfeeding. It also comes from nutrient deficiencies, namely A and D. So how your teeth tissues form is from birth. So if the mother doesn't have the right nutrients, A, D, E, and K, those are typically all around the facial formation or formation of the jaw proper. And then airway too. So breathing into your nose stimulates your brain, because the olfactory nerve is the only one that synapses directly onto the brain. So when you can't breathe properly, that actually stresses your brain out. And this is one of the first signs of Parkinson's, as we know. Neurodegeneration starts with not being able to breathe through your nose.
Yeah.
It goes through the same thing about the input. Now the input is gone, and the pain, and the brain senses that there's a threat. So it will start to change and remodel, and actually lose you lose that, that there's that saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. And that's very true. You know, Dr. Karazin has said neurons don't come back to life. They're not zombie neurons. You get neuroplasticity and you can actually have neurogenesis, but you don't have, once a neuron is dead, it's dead. It's not going to come back to life. So it's gone. So yeah, same thing with your nose. And that's why it's really important to breathe nasally through both nostrils. Try, you know, teach yourself how to do it. And that actually changes your posture indirectly too, because when you're breathing, again, back to the reflexive, remember, this is all about how your brain is interpreting information from the periphery, but then what it's sending down. So it's the both things. You're working on the body to stimulate the brain, and you're indirectly then calming your brain to calm your body. And that's why you have an immediate response.
Absolutely.
You give the body what it needs, that it responds immediately. And you give the brain what it needs, it responds immediately. So.
Fascinating. So we're now going to be hearing people clicking and humming along the street, and we know they've been listening.
Yeah,
been listening to you.
Hopefully here it would make a change to not saying anything.
Yeah. Thank you. So before
my pleasure.
I let you go, but we will definitely, hopefully, have you back another time. But before I let you go, if I could ask one more question that I know that a lot of listeners would be very interested in having your take on, is we of course hear an awful lot about the gut-brain axis and the microbiome. So with that, could you explain in your observations of the impact of a less diverse maybe microbiome, that, and what impact that has on the communication to the brain via the vagus nerve?
So we know that with respect to any microbiome, whether it's the entirety of the microbiome or, you know, gut microbiome, we know that stress, whether it's internal or external stress, has an impact on that diversity and on that abundance. So if you are chronically stressed mentally or emotionally, that is going to impact the relative abundance of flora and make you have more of the opportunistic or quote unquote bad bacteria and fungus that could be growing higher in levels that will trigger these pain sensations from the periphery, again, from your afferent going up to the brain and then sending signals down. So it's exactly the same scenario as, like, say, instead of, now we're talking about a bacteria or a fungus that's causing the peripheral issue. It's going up to the brain and stimulating the brain to say what's going on, what is happening, and that's causing a bidirectional effect. So with respect to viscera in particular, it's your entire parasympathetic branches that basically go, the wandering nerve, the vagus nerve is actually what controls that. So from the gut specifically, your parasympathetic nerve, cranial 10, is governing all the organs in the thorax and the abdomen. Whereas you have parasympathetic and sacral outflow for other organs, but specifically the ones that we're talking about with IBS here in the pelvis and the gut, specifically with the vagus nerve. So you need to do more vagal toning, or if you've heard that term, part of the easiest way to do that is diaphragmatically breathe. Then there are other things like using your senses to actually put you into that state of rest and recovery. So looking at things that are conjure image, feelings of love, and that's where the positive thought processes, positive, what's the word I'm looking for? Positive words and affirmations. Thank you. Positive affirmations that start your day versus, remember I said it comes back to, it's a biochemical event. So if you're starting your day with a negative or something negative or something stressful, that is now making your neural efficiency at stress response much higher than not.
Yes.
So that's essentially what's happening with the microbiome, is like you are affecting that microbiome, and then you're getting signals from that dysbiotic bacteria back up, or dysbiotic organisms back up to the brain. They are signaling to the brain that, you know, you are basically in threat.
In stress, yeah. Dee, I can't thank you enough. You are a mine of information and just such a joy to chat to, and really hope that you'll come back again and that we will be able to see each other in person very soon.
I know, I would love to, on all accounts, definitely.
Great.
I would love to. So.
Okay, thank
my
you
pleasure.
so much for your time, and
my pleasure. My pleasure.
We will put all of the details of how you can find details of how to work with Dee. You can certainly work with her remotely. Yes, absolutely. I've had osteopath treatments remotely with Dee, and she also runs a clinic in London. So the functional osteopath, you can find her on social media, and we will put all the details in the show notes. Dee, until the next time, thank you so much.